amazing guest for you today. We have with us Olivia Rose. Olivia uses a supportive, no nonsense coaching approach rooted in empathy, authenticity, and practical strategies to help adults with ADHD and overwhelmed women to clarify success, build confidence, and reignite their sense of purpose. Drawing on her own lived experiences, she guides clients to reconnect with their deepest motivations and create lasting, fulfilling change in all areas of life. Olivia, welcome to the show.
I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Chris.
Oh, and we're so glad to have you here. I mean, we have a lot of interesting ground to cover for sure. But before we do like to have an icebreaker on the show. And the question for you today is which fictional character do you resonate with the most and why?
Yeah, I resonate with a lesser known character, actually, but is a very powerful and profound one. And it's Antipy, who is the aunt of Wonder Woman. So we know the new Wonder Woman series, and she plays that mentorship role in that new series where she's her trainer. So she's only in the first, I don't know, a few minutes of the movie.
Hmm.
But the reason that I identify with that is because I used to identify with Wonder Woman, which we'll probably talk a little bit about today. I'm sure a lot of women out there feel like that might be an identity they wear. And when I actually started my coaching program, my mentor coach gifted me with a new way of seeing my life as the aunt. And he's from South America, so he calls her Auntie, which is always really cute. The Auntie of Wonder Woman, to help me move from I have to do it all to my role as a coach is helping other people build what they need in themselves to go forward and do the work they need to do and battle the demons or conquer the world or whatever it is. So that's my fictional character that really roots and grounds me. So when I try to start doing it all, I remember, she doesn't do it all. She looks ahead, plans ahead, and moves with intention to support others in doing their best and fulfilling their calling.
I love that, and I'll have to admit that that one definitely didn't even cross my mind at all. Like that I'm gonna have to go back and look at that again because I don't even remember that character. Wow, shows how much I pay attention, huh?
It's just in the very beginning of the first of the newest series, just in the very beginning, and pretty small role, but pivotal role in Amazonia of training Diana with an idea of something is coming, but not really knowing what it is and not having to know what it is, but trust in herself that she knew what she was doing was right to guide Diana. And she even gets into conflict with her sister, Diana's mom, around the training protocols for Diana, because she knows she's fulfilling a bigger purpose, but can't always articulate it to those around her. She's once you notice her, you're like, oof, that's a powerful character. How did I miss that the first time?
Well, actually, now that you explained it a little more, I actually do remember that character now. Actually, yeah, just never never really paid attention to it. I guess. Wow.
I will say that not every day I live up to that power and strength and fortitude and groundedness, but every day I try to root back in that on my journey of self development. So I do not want anyone to be mistaken that I think I am as powerful and resilient and stoic as she is, but it's a guiding light for me. And it really helps me remember my priorities and stay the course even when things are tough.
I love that. I definitely love that. Just slipping into the conversation of the day. Um, how would you define procrastination? What does it mean to you personally?
Mm. Mm. There's emotions that come up first when you say procrastination, and I posit that that's common for many people. You hear procrastination, and all of a sudden you're like guilt, doubt, fear, confusion, bad, overwhelm. So it's funny that even as you know, you and I have been preparing for this conversation, um, and I use the word procrastination a lot, even in my own work. I don't often stop to notice the emotions that bubble up with procrastination. I don't know that we have any quote positive words that we use around procrastination. I think we tend to ascribe it and we talk about it as negative. So noticing that first is really interesting. But second, I think oftentimes procrastination is a misnomer that we use, that we might be actually prioritizing by putting something later because something else is more pressing now. And um, I hear clients and I hear students. I also teach at college. I hear students and clients talk a lot about procrastination, and I hear all the tone of that, the shame and guilt. And sometimes I stop and go, "That's not procrastination. You're choosing to not do something that's not important to you or doesn't align with your priorities. It might be something someone else wants you to do, and then it like gets that spiral." So that's, I think, the second thing I think about. And the third, maybe hopefully final on that, is that avoidance. hmm And especially with ADHD, and I know that's a common conversation piece on your podcast is ADHD, and this idea that high procrastination shows up with ADHD folks because of a high level of distraction. And and I don't know, I think I'm constantly reevaluating my relationship with that word and working with clients to evaluate that relationship, because I think oftentimes for people it's less about procrastination and it's more about I am distracted by what is showing up in the moment, or this shiny object, or my own desire, or I'm avoiding because of a negative association with a thing.
No, I like that. And, thank you for bringing that up. And it's true. Working with ADHD, it's not necessarily. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call that procrastination myself, just because, like you said, it's they're doing one task, and then they walk away to get like a cup of water. They notice the door squeaks, so they fix the door. Then
Oh
they
my gosh, totally.
so I actually almost consider that a form of kind of like precrastination.
Hmm.
The only issue with that is that sometimes that first thing, you get back to it, and maybe you're baking a cake or something, and the cake gets burned because you completely forgot about it when you did the 15 other things before that.
That's why timers are essential. I
Definitely.
couldn't live my life without timers.
And we all know that there's no silver bullet. Everybody's different when it comes to procrastination. Whether it's the avoidance part, whether it's the distraction part, um, whether it's the creative. I kind of want to use that as an excuse to enable my past acts, but you know, I,
Mm,
I, I kind of am hesitant to do that. But what would you say is your secret sauce for overcoming procrastination?
mm. Yeah, I just alluded to my timer, and my Pomodoro timer is my lifesaver. And I use a separate timer for those that are watching on video. I picked it right up. I knew right where it was, my trusty little timer. And each side of the cube has different time amounts, making my life easy. And the top counts forward. So I use it in so many different ways. And the reason I use a separate timer from my phone is because of what you were just saying. You go to get a cup of water and the door squeaks, and you're before you know it, you've done 25 other things. And that's why I use my Pomodoro timer, because if I say set a timer on my phone, as soon as I go to my phone, there is an alert or a pop-up or a text or a reminder or something that's going to send me down a rabbit hole. My timer only does timering. That's all it does. The only thing that can distract me is playing with every time I turn it and it turns to a different time. Um, so that is like my secret sauce, and I use it in a few different ways. I use it to maybe monitor, like if I don't have a time blockage, I might just set it to count forward in time, so that um, I can check my time blindness. So keep it there, the time moves, and I look and I go, oh, I've been doing this for 55 minutes. Maybe I need to get up and walk for 3 minutes and then come back. But I also use it for hard stops, so that I'm not, especially if it's a project I'm really going to love. So that way I'm not going, I have a way to check my hyper focus, and same thing with my clients, a way to check their hyper focus, so that you're forced to take breaks and reassess. So the interesting part about hyper focus with ADHD is that our brain is getting so lit up with all those beautiful chemicals that make us feel good by working on a project that we really love. Sometimes not even a project that we didn't think we would love, but we get so into it, we start loving the progress or the process. And all that dopamine and all those other chemicals that make us feel good just ping, 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 flood, flood, flood. And we want to ride that wave. We want to ride that high as long as possible. And it's not just people with ADHD. It's a shared human condition. And we want to ride that wave as long as possible. We want to feel good as long as possible. And we can insert that in anything in our life, right? And so the thing with hyperfocus is the riding that wave can go too long. And that's the crash and burn. And that's why most of the time we don't finish projects. We don't see them through. And a sort of a common characteristic of ADHD, regardless of gender, is you do a project until some amount of completion, but not full completion, somewhere around 70, 80, 90%. Uh, and then you just drop it and move on, and you find the next thing you're going to follow. That can be a result of I burned myself out on it. So by setting my timer, then I can't burn myself out on that wave. I can ride the wave, I get an interruption. And the key that I have to do is not just go, not, your alarm in bed, hit snooze, hit snooze. The key is I have to hold myself accountable to stopping. I force myself to move and get out of my space and move for 3 to 5 minutes, and then come back and reassess. Do I need to keep going because I have a deadline? Do I need to keep going because I've hit a productivity spike and I need to ride that productivity? Assess it. It's variable. And sometimes am I just justifying continuing to do it because I'm hyper fixated and focused? And if the answer is yes on that one, I probably need to stop because I'm riding the wave till burnout, and I will not come back to it because I am exhausted. I'm burned out from it. So that helps me actually be a completer on projects. Before I had this hack, and before I really, and to let everyone know, I did not know I had ADHD until relatively recently. So I didn't know why I would crash and burn. I didn't, and I didn't even know that I should fix it. Before that, my partner used to call me an 80%er. I was a solid 80%er. I would get anything 80% done. And those of us in education, that's a B. It's pretty darn good. But there are a lot of projects that you got to kind of see to the end, right? 80% isn't quite enough. That last 20% is essential. So how I make that last 20% happen that is essential is by stopping before my wave crashes. So when I come back, I have more dopamine, more energy, and I haven't burned out on it. And to go back to procrastination, if you burn out on it, you are really likely to procrastinate doing it because you've got all sorts of emotion tied up with it, that you don't want to face. So that's a long time to talk about a timer, but I hope it helps people understand why a timer separate from your phone, it's a $10 investment ish. And it like changes the entire game for me on an nearly everyday basis. Oh, one other thing about the timer, beat the clock. Beat the clock is a great hack for ADHD. And a client of mine taught me this. I asked her how she might dopamine mine. So dopamining or dopamine mining is a way of talking about how do you find ways to get a dopamine hit, pleasure hormone hit, out of a task that normally sucks. So a good example, my client was like, she's like, I will avoid unloading the dishwasher for days. She's like, I will, and clearly she lived alone, so she could do that, or that would happen as a result of it. So she's like, I will literally use all my dishes out of the dishwasher, and then they're all stacked up because I can't put them in the dishwasher, and then my house is a mess because I don't like to unload the dishwasher. It's a boring task. I've done it a million times in my life, on and on and on. And so I posited to her in general just how you might dopamine mine um, over boring tasks so you can get them done. Because what's the point of having a dishwasher if you're not going to use it for its intended efficiencies? And she decided she was going to do beat the clock. So she set her timer and said, if I just unload my dishwasher at a normal pace, how long does it take? And it took her somewhere around 3 to 4 minutes. And so now she uses her timer to beat the clock. So it's a game every day. Can I do it faster than 3 minutes? Go. So another great way to use your timer. It's fun. It's interesting. The faster you go, the better you feel. And then you get done, you're like, yeah, 2 minutes and 12 seconds. Look at me go. And you get that ping. And it's just another way to motivate yourself to do these mundane tasks of life. And we learn it from kids. We do it with kids all the time. Beat the clock, right? And so, anyway, another way you can use your timer to help you do the things that just kind of suck that you don't normally want to do.
I really like that. I really like those, especially beat the clock. And you talk about the dopamine hits and trying. Actually, that was one of the things I was going to ask you. What are some ways that, you can get that? Because, I mean, there are things that we have to do in life that suck. I mean, there's always taxes, the never ending story, which is laundry, dishes, um, and different things like that. And, that's a very good example for sure. Um, do you think, and this is something I've often wondered, with delayed gratification and ADHD, because I was trying to do some research into it. I didn't really see a lot, so it's one of the reasons I'm happy you're on the show today.
Mm.
When we're talking delayed gratification, we're talking like reward systems, right? Because we reward ourselves um, after we say do the laundry 5 times in a row, we get a Starbucks. I don't know. I'm making stuff up. Um, Is that something else that is effective, or maybe it would not really be in the case of ADHD?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So, delayed gratification is tricky for all humans. So, again, a lot of, I say this a lot in my practice. What works for folks with ADHD will work for anyone, but what works for anyone may not work for someone with ADHD. Um, so, delayed gratification is one of those things that humans are not really wired to appreciate delayed gratification. And that's because back here in our occipital lobe, we like to call it the reptilian brain because it is the earliest form of brain that we had. The rest of the brain was evolutionarily added on, ending here with the executive function in the prefrontal cortex. So, as I geek out in brain science for just a minute, and you can see even for those viewing on YouTube, you can see back here my little brain framed map over here. I pull this out with clients all the time. Um, so back here in this occipital lobe, this reptilian brain in the back of our right, connected to our spinal cord, it does not understand delayed gratification at all. It lives only in, am I safe in this moment or am I in danger? And it also tries to predict danger ahead, and it is a terrible predictor of danger. It is our biggest predictor of danger. It's the one that gives us danger signals all the time. It's why we actually fear change in the future, or fear what will happen from change in the future, because it's a terrible, terrible predictor of actual danger. But it is our number one predictor. So we're in a catch 22. That part of our brain tells us, warning, warning, fear, fear, fear ahead, but it's super bad at it. So that's where we got to move into our cognitive functions to check that system. Okay, that being said, I say all that because the back part of the brain doesn't understand delayed gratification. It understands, am I safe now? Am I enjoying things now? And will it continue? So that's true for all of us, that delayed gratification isn't great. People without ADHD, though, can kind of get to a culminating reward and tend to feel it a bit more and tend to hold on to that feeling a bit more than those with ADHD. Folks with ADHD, we have a really hard time carrying emotional connection over time and applying that over time. So when someone asks me, and I hear this a lot from my clients too, when someone asks me, how was your week? So they want me to scan over 7 days and give you an overview. I don't know, because it was like, it was up and down, up and down, up and down. I don't know. I can tell you how I am right now. And if you ask me how my week has been, how I feel right now is probably how I'm going to see the entire week behind me. Um, and it's not really how that week went. And so delayed gratification is sort of the future projection of that. If I am putting off the reward I'm going to get in the future, I'm not going to attach it to the past where I felt uncomfortable. I'm probably more likely to stick with the uncomfortable. So I actually, the hack or the antidote to delayed gratification is get your reward systems over time and immediately and let those build up. The more rewards you get, the more inclined you will be to stay the course. So, everyone knows the struggle of weight loss, right? We can all get that one. And so if your goal is 10 pounds and you have to wait and stay the course until you've lost 10 pounds to get a reward, your special Starbucks drink that's full of fat and calories and sugar and so delicious. If you have to weigh 10 pounds, that is a long slog. So, what mini rewards do you give yourself for every half pound, every 1 pound? Get it as small as you can. Doesn't mean you get a Starbucks every time because it will thwart your goal, but give yourself some other kind of reward, whatever that may be. And it's not just weight loss, it's anything. You've got a big project at work that you've got to work on for 6 months. That is a long time, right? And so what are the mini milestones that you can celebrate on a daily basis or a weekly basis to keep your energy? Because as soon as you get a dopamine hit, as soon as you get a pleasure response, you start to associate that thing as pleasurable. And the more you get of those, the more pleasure you get, the more you will stay the course. So, baby milestones, celebrate small successes, get that dopamine hit, keep going. Here's a quick, great client story. I had a client who, she's in a medical industry, and she it does work with clients, and they spend time in her room for a little bit alone, and then she comes back in, finishes up the treatment, and moves on, exits them out. And she does this all day, 8 hours a day. And she was trying to complete medical paperwork in those little 15 to 20-minute spots between clients. She's like, I end my day freaking exhausted. I'm so tired that I can't then do all the medical billing at the end of the day. And as we talked about it, it was really because one, she was just shifting gears so often, her brain was getting tired from shifting gears so much. But two, there was no real tangible reward for her to do that. She was cramming it in, and it didn't have any reward in and of itself. So I said, you're not going to like this, but I'm going to ask you to try it for a few weeks. Start your week as early in the day as possible. So Monday, Tuesday, first thing in the day, can you find the time to do that and block off 1 hour and just do that? Just do that and reward yourself for getting it done, because when you do this medical paperwork, you get paid. So that's a reward. And then and this is another tip that's so important and helps with delayed gratification, is do it first thing in the day where you have the biggest amount of reserve because you're coming off of a nice sleep. Do it early in the day, then you get a reward for yourself for doing the hard thing early on. It gives you momentum the rest of the day. So anyway, she did that, and she found that she actually felt so rewarded. She got flooded with so many reward brain chemicals that she's like, I actually like doing this now. And I'm going to do it to start my week every week, because instead of the slog, I have to fit it in and I'm trying to do it between the people I care about. It's its own thing. And she got a reward by being like, I did something hard and I did it well. And I started my week with a big accomplishment. All the burnout was gone from something that seemed not related.
I like that. And just going back and thank you so much for those tips and clearing that up about the delayed gratification. One of the things I did want to go back and touch on a little bit was the well hyperfixation or hyper focus. The question that I had, and I'm sure that many people might have this. I mean, it can be a superpower for sure because you get hyper into projects and you can get 80% done or 100% done, whatever the case may be, but you wind up burned out. Now, my question is, how do you approach somebody who gets hyper fixated, but they hyperfixate on, like, in that reptilian brain? Then I guess they're always on the what if scenarios, but they're focused on those what if scenarios. They get hyper focused on a single, maybe bad dream they had, or maybe bad feeling they have about a task, and they're just hyper fixated on it. How do you
Yeah.
get out of that?
Yeah. That is such a good question. And I wish there was a singular answer. It sort of depends on what's going on there. And so this is where, many cases, my coaching is unique in that I come from a background of educational psychology. So I studied educational psychology. I was in education environments for 20 plus years, and then blended that with coaching, and integral coaching, which is really aligning the body, heart, and mind as all centers of wisdom. And we in Western culture, we are really rewarded for big powerful brains and logic and what do you think, what do you know, and actually, particularly for women, but for all people, we're told your emotional responses are not actually knowledge, they're overreactions, which is not really true. And so when we can lean into the messages that our emotions bring us, our heart, the messages our bodies bring us, and I like to say lubricate the communication channels between those, our brains can actually make better decisions and do better things. So I say all of that because I tend to find that hyperfixation is because the body or the emotions, the heart know something that the brain is not acknowledging and is not connecting with. And we override these things. So I had this happen to me recently, actually. So I have to do this work all the time too. I'm not over here magically, being the shining example of how to get it perfect. I have to practice all the time. So I'd really been contemplating this decision I had to make about where I prioritize my time and what I do with my time and what I choose to do or keep doing. And I had been really clear coming into 2025 what my priorities were, especially for the first quarter. And but I felt I just kept feeling like a decision I had made logically kept not feeling quite right, and it kept coming up for me. I was hyper fixating on it. I was talking about it with trusted collaborators. I was talking about it with my partner. I was talking about it with my coach, and it was coming up. And I realized I actually went to a workshop where it was all somatics, which is a fancy word for getting into your body and letting the wisdom of the body bring something to light that maybe you're not paying attention to. And so I did a somatic workshop, and being in the body, all of a sudden I was like, oh, I get it now. My body, my gut knows that this thing that I think I've committed to doesn't really align with my most important priorities in the first quarter of 2025. It really doesn't. Yet my brain said, but people are counting on you, but you already said yes, but you don't want to make people unhappy, do you? You want to be liked. You don't want to hurt someone's feeling. You see. And so my logic was overriding what my gut center knew was not really what was best for me. And when I got that clarity, I then had a chance to let those communication channels happen and accept that it's not going to feel good to admit this. It's not. It's going to feel worse when I fail. It's not going to feel good to admit this. It's not going to feel good to tell someone that something has changed. All of that. But I got that clear message. And when I spoke with that person, I'm not going to say it was an easy conversation. It was not, but it was an incredibly fulfilling one. And, I did have all those nervous feelings before we had the conversation, that bubbly belly and all of that. But when I aligned with my integrity and my truth that my body was telling me, I could have this conversation with this other person. And she said, I don't love to hear that, but thank you so much for being honest with me and being in your integrity. And then she went on to tell me a story about how that was helping her do a hard thing for herself that she was having trouble getting herself to do. So, again, kind of a longer story, but oftentimes hyper focus or hyper fixation is because we have something unresolved that we haven't fully fleshed out. And sometimes it's those disconnects between different parts of ourselves kind of battling. And by leaning into those things and recognizing them and spending time with them and confronting the hard information or the hard truths, we can move. We can then move through it. So I'm telling this right now. I'm not hyper fixated on it anymore. I have now feel resolute. I feel like, okay, I can move forward and I'm okay with it. So that's one of the reasons that happens. Another reason that hyperfixation happens is because we haven't yet taught the back of our or the front of our brain how to override that back of the brain. So we get hyperfixated on the fears and they take over, and we haven't figured out how to actually move into a more executive place around those fears and reassure and calm the back of the brain around the prediction of the fear. And oftentimes we don't actually do that, even though I'm talking about the front of the brain doing it. We don't actually do it by tell the back of the brain. We actually do it by calming this part of the brain. And that's by using somatic practices or mindfulness practices to calm this down. When we get hyper fixated on the future or the fears, it's often because our occipital lobe is overreacting and we haven't taught it to calm down. And so that is a series of practices that are mindfulness, body work, and energetically calming down so that it's not in hyper response mode all the time.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess it's kind of a leftover from evolution, though, right? I mean, it's more common for us to be hyper fixated on, fears because everything we were afraid of when we were running naked through the woods, 20,000 years ago, likely killed us. Oh, George running snake, snake bite George, George died. And then so every time you see a snake, but it's not so happy. And maybe you have some insight on this as well. I love asking people this question. Why do you think that that reptilian part of the brain where we didn't have tests, we didn't have deadlines, we didn't have public speaking? Why do you think that those fears surface when they're not real dangers like saber toothed tiger or snakes or I don't know, storms, fire, anything like that?
Yeah. Um, it's a great question. Yeah. So we haven't been in this evolved environment, this type of environment, nearly as long as we spent the time relying on that part of the brain to keep us safe. It's and I, the number of years that humans have been around and the earth and all of that is not readily accessible to me in the recesses of my brain. But we were living in the wild far longer than we have been in this domesticated thing that we created. Our brains have not caught up to that. And as a result of it, we often live in a fear state far more than we need to. So when snake, oh no, snake might bite George, I'm not thinking about it, I'm just running. We actually did something to burn off the fear energy. We ran from the threat. We literally ran from the threat. And running from the threat, physiologically and brain chemical wise, shakes off all those fear. Sorry to those of you listening and not seeing, I was literally shaking, so my voice quivered. But it literally shakes off the fear and it teaches us to calm down and come back to safety. Fast forward to modern life. We get those fear triggers all the time, but we don't physically run. We don't do, and there's fight, flight, freeze, fawn responses. And some folks might not be familiar with the fawn response. That's a whole other topic that we could talk about. But all of those things will help us burn off some of that. But the physical movement piece is the biggest part of shaking it off. So we all, not all, many of us have had a relationship with a dog or have a relationship with a dog currently. And we know when a dog gets fearful or has a fear response, they shake after. They shake. That is their nervous system shaking off that fear because it doesn't exist anymore. We don't we have gotten out of the habits of doing that. So instead, what happens in this modern life is that, oh no, I got an email from my boss, they're mad at me, I'm in trouble. 2 minutes later, oh, a coworker walks by and I think they gave me a dirty look. They're mad at me. Oh, a few minutes later, I spill my drink and oh my gosh, that's bad. And all these little things keep escalating our stress responses, even though none of them are going to kill us. They keep elevating our stress responses and we don't shake it off and come down from that. And that actually is what kills us because that leads to heart disease, mental health disorders, and many other comorbidities because we actually, our stress level comes up and we stay there and we spike at this highest level up and down all the time. We're not actually bringing our nervous systems all the way down. We go to bed heightened and we wake up heightened with alarms and we keep doing it. So we actually have to learn because of our domesticated lives, we actually have to learn how it best works for us to burn off and shake off the stress and bring that down. And many people have great coping mechanisms. People are trained runners and athletes and lifting hard things at the gym or literally learning to shake or doing mindfulness. Those all help. But there's a piece that we have to do with it, which is we have to come into our bodies and teach ourselves how to slow down because this modern life doesn't have any slow pace to it. So back when we were George living on the savannah, our lives were not programmed the way they were today. We went to bed when the sun went down, however that was in the seasons. We woke up when the sun came up, and there was actually more time. You weren't hunting, gathering, and building huts all day, every day. There was much more downtime, particularly in the middle of the day, the hottest part of the day, the Spanish siesta. And people literally took downtime because they were doing so much physical labor. You had to moderate yourself. We don't do that now. So we over do everything all of the time. And we have to recognize, and it's a cultural piece, we have to recognize that rest is not laziness. Rest is not slack, or rest is not procrastination. Rest is not being a bum on the couch. Rest is an essential part of the efficiency and productivity and success cycle. And if you are not giving yourself rest as well as physical outputs, that's where you are at the highest risk for all of those killers that we know about: heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, mental health disorders, etc.
Wow, thank you for that explanation, and it's it's very true. None of us, well, I'm not going to say none of us, many of us don't take the time to actually unwind at the end of a day. And that's where other coping mechanisms like alcohol and drugs or chocolate or whatever come in, but those are all detrimental to that as well.
And TV. I love TV, don't get me wrong. I watch it nightly. I am not going to say that I am some freak human that doesn't, but TV is not actual recovery. Scrolling, whatever social media platform you want to scroll, is not actual recovery. And recovery doesn't have to be a long time. All it takes for me is 5 minutes of silent meditation at the end of a workday to get a little restoration. That's all it takes. Sometimes I tell people start with 2 minutes. You can find 2 minutes just to teach your brain it can calm down. And I know everyone out there is going, doesn't work for me. My brain is broken. Or as I say it, my mind is too full to be mindful. Like anything, you have to practice it. Your brain, if you are an adult, your brain has spent your entire life on overdrive because that's how we have acculturalized ourselves in this Western culture. You have trained your brain to be on on overdrive. You have to take time. It takes repetitions to train your brain that it can quiet down sometimes, that it can actually do that. But it won't happen the first time. It won't happen the second time. It might not actually happen until the 300th time, honestly. So, talk about delayed gratification. However, it will start to slow down and that starts to heal the brain. And there's great gratification in and of itself when that happens.
Oh no, that is for sure. Olivia, it's been a really great conversation. We are coming up pretty close to the time. Do you think there's anything that I didn't ask that I should have asked, or anything that we didn't cover that you feel we should have covered today?
Uh, well, I could talk about this for hours in case you couldn't tell. Not so much. I would just like to make a note that I can be found in a few places if now is an okay time to do that.
Oh, definitely. What are the best ways for our listeners to reach out?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Olivia Rose Coach. I have a lot of reels on there, just little short things about things that humans face every day. My website is rblxcoach.com, shorthand for rebelxcoach.com. And I have a great freebie on there of how to start to eliminate some things from your life to add the things in that are most important to you. We live in this additive culture, add on, add on, add on. You've got to take things away to have enough time. Um, and so there's a great activity there to help you do that. You can also find a time to book with me, 30 minutes. I'm not terribly salesy, still haven't mastered that, but 30 minutes talk about what's going on for you and see if some of my coaching might be a great fit for you. I offer individual and group coaching programs. So there's some customization that we can do there. And so I'd love to see people in either of those places.
Excellent. And to all our listeners, don't worry about grabbing a paper and pen. You know, we are going to have those in the show notes for you, so you'll be able to easily access them.
I also
And
have I apologize, Chris. I also have a free Facebook group called ADHD Women's Productivity Collective. So I'll make sure that you have that information as well if people want to join and be in a space where they can talk with others free about what's going on for them, learn tips and tricks, and have all of this normalized for them. It is a great welcoming space for that.
excellent. Thanks so much, Olivia. We'll definitely add that in the show notes as well. And just once again, thank you so much for being on the show and being so open and willing to share all this information with us today. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that motivation or inspiration for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time. All right. Let's see if this thing popped up. Oh, there it goes. Yep.
There it is.